Forget everything you know about snowmobiles. While you picture safe rides, history created absolute monsters. Imagine a Nazi-era sled powered by a giant propeller that could slice you in half, or a Chrysler bike with a chainsaw engine that couldn't even move in snow. These aren't just vehicles, they are engineering nightmares. In this video, we are digging up the 10 most bizarre, dangerous, and unbelievable snow machines ever built. One of them is basically a sports car on tank tracks. I bet you can't guess which one actually killed the company that made it. Buckle up, hit that subscribe button right now, and let's see if you can handle the list all the way to the end. We are starting our list with a machine born from the sheer desperation of World War II. This is the Tatra V855, and yes, that is a giant propeller strapped to the back of a luxury car. Developed in 1942 in Nazi-occupied Czechoslovakia, this wasn't just a snowmobile, it was a lethal aerosled. The German army was bogging down in the brutal Russian winter, and they desperately needed a vehicle that didn't care about deep drifts or frozen mud. Tatra engineers took their high-end T87 sedan, chopped it up, and installed a massive engine in the rear to spin a terrifying wooden propeller. It looks like something straight out of a steampunk nightmare. The engineering behind this beast is fascinatingly chaotic. It used two skis for steering in the front and a large drum roller in the back to assist with braking because air props don't stop quickly. Powered by a 2.9-liter air-cooled V8 engine, this sled could generate 75 horsepower. That might not sound like much today, but it was capable of propelling the vehicle to speeds of nearly 50 miles per hour across uneven ice. The V855 also featured a unique secondary shaft that could drive the rear roller directly for climbing steep hills, a feature that was innovative but mechanically a nightmare to maintain in freezing conditions. However, the Tatra V855 never saw mass production, and thank goodness for that. It remained a prototype because, practically speaking, it was too heavy and far too dangerous for regular infantry use. The propeller offered zero protection against debris, and the noise alone would deafen the pilot. Stopping this heavy iron sled on ice was more of a suggestion than a command. Today, replicas exist in museums, standing as a testament to an era where engineers threw safety out the window in favor of raw thrust. It is a beautiful, dangerous coffin on skis that proves war makes people build crazy things. From the Czech front, we move deeper into the frozen east to the Soviet Union. If the Tatra was a sedan with a prop, the Kamov Ka-30 is a minivan with a helicopter complex. Known as the Sever II, or simply an aerosled, this vehicle was designed by the famous Kamov Helicopter Bureau in the 1960s. The Soviets had vast stretches of Siberia where paved roads simply did not exist for 9 months of the year. They didn't need a recreational toy. They needed a heavy-duty workhorse that could carry mail, medicine, and grumpy Communist Party officials across the tundra at high speeds. The K-30 looks like a fiberglass loaf of bread suspended on 4 skis, propelled by a deafening 260-horsepower radial aircraft engine mounted on the rear. This represents the golden age of Soviet utility design, ugly, loud, but virtually unstoppable. Inside, it functioned like a small bus, capable of carrying passengers in relative warmth while the propeller behind them screamed like a banshee. Unlike the Tatra, the K-30 used an AI-14RS engine, the same type found in light aircraft, giving it enough thrust to hit speeds of over 60 miles per hour. The suspension system utilized aircraft-grade shock absorbers to handle the brutal frozen ridges of the Russian north. Now let's jump to 1960s America, where the consumer snowmobile market was exploding, and designers were trying literally anything to see what stuck. Enter the Bolens Diablo, specifically the Model 500 family introduced around 1967. Most snowmobiles have the driver sitting on the engine straddling a seat like a motorcycle. Bolens looked at that and said, "No, let's make the human the trailer." The Diablo is an articulated snowmobile. This means the engine, the gas tank, and the tracks are in a separate unit out front, and you, the rider, sit on a passive sled towed behind it. The physics of riding a Diablo are completely counterintuitive. You steer by turning the handlebars on the sled, which pivots the entire front engine unit left or right. It is essentially a tractor unit for a human being. The advantage claimed by Bolens was that the rider was isolated from the vibration and noise of the 16-horsepower Hearth engine. Plus, without the weight of a 180-pound rider on the drive unit, the front end could float over powder rather than digging in. It used a twin-track design, giving it a wide footprint that was hard to tip over, a common problem with early single-track sleds. However, the reality of riding it was quirky. If you hit a bump, the drive unit would buck independently of your seat, creating a weird disconnect. If you went over a crest, the engine would disappear over the hill before you did, and God forbid you jackknifed. The handlebars could snap back with bone-breaking force. Despite its odd appearance, the Diablo has a massive cult following today. It is affectionately known as the Red Devil, and collectors love them because they are so mechanically simple yet visually distinct. It was a bold experiment in driver ergonomics that didn't quite catch on, but it remains one of the most charmingly weird machines on snow. If you thought the Bolens Diablo was unique, meet its Canadian cousin, the Hus-Ski 200. Produced in the early 1960s in Pointe-Claire, Quebec, the Hus-Ski took the tow-behind concept and made it even more rustic. The marketing slogan was the Snow Traveler, and it looked less like a vehicle and more like a garden tiller that decided to go skiing. Like the Diablo, the driver sits on a detached sulky, which is basically a ski seat that drags behind the tractor unit. But the Hus-Ski had a secret weapon, or a fatal flaw depending on how you look at it, its primitive track system. Instead of a rubber belt, the early Hus-Ski models used wooden cleats. Yes, actual wood. These wooden cross slats were bolted to conveyor belting, churning through the snow like a paddle steamer. The engine, typically a 10-horsepower JLO two-stroke, sat directly on top of these tracks. The result was a machine that had incredible traction in deep, fluffy snow because the wooden cleats acted like paddles. It could climb hills that modern sleds would struggle with simply because it clawed its way up. The entire front unit would pivot for steering, requiring strong arms and a good sense of balance from the rider to keep it upright. The experience of riding a Hus-Ski is purely physical. You are constantly fighting the torque of the machine. The ski-seater board you sat on was essentially a piece of plywood on skis, offering zero suspension. Your knees were the shock absorbers. Interestingly, in 1965, Bolens actually bought the Hus-Ski rights to develop the Diablo we just mentioned, making the Hus-Ski the grandfather of the articulated snowmobile movement. Seeing one today is rare, and seeing one running is even rarer, mostly because those wooden cleats tend to rot or snap after 60 years. It's a piece of agricultural history disguised as recreational fun. Let's scale things up, way up. When Joseph Armand Bombardier invented the snowmobile, he wasn't just thinking about one-person toys, he wanted to move communities. In the late 1940s, before snowplowing was common in rural Canada, winter meant total isolation. Enter the Bombardier C18. This wasn't a snowmobile, it was a snow bus. The C18 designation stood for its capacity, 18 passengers. But in reality, they often crammed 25 school children into this boxy track behemoth to get them to class through blizzards that would bury a regular car. The C18 featured a wood and metal body sitting on huge rear tracks and front skis. The design is iconic, looking like a bloated Volkswagen Beetle mixed with a tank. Under the hood, it usually packed a Chrysler flathead 6-cylinder engine, putting out around 115 horsepower. That is enough torques to move the heavy 3,000-pound chassis through feet of unplowed snow. The rear tracks were driven by a sprocket system that was surprisingly durable. Inside, it was loud, smelled of gasoline and wet wool, but it was warm. For decades, this was the only link to the outside world for doctors and mail carriers. The driving experience was more like steering a boat than a car. The front skis were massive, and turning the steering wheel required serious effort without power steering. The C18 didn't go fast, maybe 30 miles per hour downhill, but speed wasn't the point. It was about torque and flotation. The width of the tracks allowed it to float over snowdrifts that would swallow a pickup truck. Today, fully restored C18s are highly prized collector items, often used for winter tours. They represent a time when snowmobile meant public transit, not adrenaline sports. It is a gentle giant in a world of speed demons. We have to pay respect to the ancestors. Before Ski-Doo, before Polaris, there was the Eliason motor Toboggan. In the 1920s, a man named Carl Eliason in Sainer, Wisconsin had a foot problem that prevented him from snowshoeing. Being an inventor, he bolted a tiny 2.5 horsepower outboard boat motor to a long wooden toboggan, used a bicycle chain for transmission, and created the first practical snowmobile. By the 1940s, the four-wheel drive auto company was producing these motor toboggans for the military and utility workers, proving that a simple idea could change winter travel forever. The Eliason is fascinating because it is so primitive it looks like it shouldn't work. The engine is mounted right in the front, completely exposed to the elements. The track is essentially a ladder of steel cleats running under the wooden sled. You steer it using 2 ropes or a simple lever connected to the front skis, which often barely touch the ground if the snow was hard. The radiator was often mounted on the side or front, looking like an afterthought. It makes a distinct clack-clack-clack sound as the metal cleats hit the snow, announcing its arrival long before you see it. Riding an Eliason is a lesson in patience and mechanics. You are sitting on a wooden plank inches above a moving steel chain. There is absolutely no suspension. If you hit a rock, you feel it in your teeth. But the genius of the Eliason was its endless track system, a patent that paved the way for every modern snowmobile track used today. It wasn't fast, topping out at maybe 20 miles per hour, but it could haul gear and people through the Wisconsin woods when nothing else could move. It is the Model T of the snowmobile world, crude, uncomfortable, but revolutionary. You might not know the name Aktiv Snow-Trac, but if you have seen Stanley Kubrick's horror masterpiece The Shining, you have seen this machine. It's the red vehicle that Scatman Crothers drives through the blizzard to the Overlook Hotel. Manufactured in Sweden starting in 1957, the Snow-Trac was a brilliant piece of engineering designed for deep powder and versatility. Unlike the Bombardier bus, the Snow-Trac was smaller, roughly the size of a compact car, and it used a standard Volkswagen industrial air-cooled engine, making it reliable and easy to fix. What makes the Snow-Trac weird is its steering mechanism called the variator. Most dual-track vehicles use 2 levers to brake one track and turn, like a tank. The Snow-Trac used a traditional steering wheel. When you turned the wheel, a system of variable pulleys would smoothly change the speed of the left or right track without losing power. This made it incredibly easy to drive. If you could drive a VW Beetle, you could drive a Snow-Trac. It could carry up to 7 people or be stripped out for cargo, weighing in at about 2,800 pounds fully loaded. The genius of the Snow-Trac was its simplicity and flotation. It used many off-the-shelf Volkswagen parts, making repairs easy even in the middle of nowhere. It sat on wide rubber tracks that gave it lower ground pressure than a human foot. This meant it could drive over deep, soft snow without sinking. It wasn't fast, topping out at around 15 miles per hour, and the heater was famously terrible, classic VW style, but it was unstoppable. It became a favorite of utility companies, the military, and apparently horror movie directors. It is a cute, boxy red legend that proves clever engineering beats brute force. Welcome to the 1970s, the era of wild experimentation. Most snowmobiles had settled into the standard form, 1 track in the back, 2 skis in the front. But a company called Leisure Vehicles Inc. asked, "Why don't we make it look like a race car?" The result was the Raider. This is a twin-track snowmobile with a rear-mounted engine and a cockpit where the driver sits low, feet forward, just like in a Formula One car. The Double Eagle was their premium, high-power model introduced around 1972, and it looked absolutely wicked compared to the upright sleds of the time. The Raider was designed to solve a specific problem: stability. Traditional snowmobiles were notoriously tippy. By putting the driver low between two tracks, the Raider had a fantastically low center of gravity. You could corner this thing hard without worrying about flipping over. The engine, typically a 440cc unit producing around 40 horsepower, was tucked away in the back. This meant the noise and fumes were behind you, not in your face. It felt like piloting a spaceship across the snow. The bodywork was fiberglass, angular, and aggressive, weighing just over 400 pounds. So why did it fail? While it was great on hard-packed trails, the Raider was terrible in deep powder. The low-slung cockpit acted like a snowplow, gathering snow until the machine got heavy and stuck. And because it was so wide, nearly 4 feet, you couldn't lean into turns to help carve through the snow like you can on a bike. Plus, the twin tracks created extra drag, making it less efficient. Despite its flaws, the Raider Double Eagle remains one of the coolest-looking machines ever made. It's the closest you can get to driving a Lamborghini on ice, provided the snow isn't more than 6 inches deep. In 1979, Chrysler was trying to find a hit product to save their finances, and for some reason they decided the world needed a snow bike. Meet the Chrysler Snowrunner. It wasn't a sled, it was essentially a moped with a ski on the front and a tiny track on the back. Marketed as the ultimate portable fun machine, the Snowrunner was designed to be disassembled. You could pull 4 pins, break it down into 3 pieces, and throw it in the trunk of your car. It was a bold idea aimed at casual winter fans, not hardcore riders. It was powered by a 134cc Chrysler Power B engine, originally designed for chainsaws and water pumps. This little motor screamed like an angry insect and produced about 7 horsepower. The whole machine weighed roughly 80 pounds, which is incredibly light. The concept sounds amazing on paper, a lightweight, affordable snow scooter for everyone. The top speed was advertised at around 25 miles per hour, which felt terrifyingly fast when you were balancing on a single ski over ice. It even had a unique centrifugal clutch, meaning you just twisted the throttle and went, in theory. In reality, the Snowrunner had one major enemy: snow. If the snow was packed hard like a road, it was a blast. But if you hit even 3 inches of fresh powder, the Snowrunner would sink. It lacked the power and the track surface area to float. It became a digging machine, burying itself instantly. Riding it was a balancing act. It was tippy, underpowered, and hard to control. Chrysler poured millions into marketing, but the public realized quickly that a snowmobile that can't handle snow is useless. They were liquidated cheaply in the early 80s, but today they are cult icons for their quirky failure. We finish our list with a modern marvel that proves engineers still have a sense of humor. In 2018, Nissan arrived at the Chicago Auto Show with something that made jaws drop. The 370 Ski, pronounced 370 Ski. They took their legendary 370Z Roadster, a 332 horsepower rear-wheel drive sports car, and decided it needed to conquer the Alps. This isn't a CGI render, it is a fully functional, one-off build created by Nissan Motorsports to show the world that convertibles aren't just for summer. To make this Frankenstein monster, they had to lift the car 3 inches and cut out the wheel wells to fit the massive Dominator track system from American Track Truck. In the front, the wheels were replaced with heavy-duty skis measuring 12 inches wide. The engine is the stock 3.7-liter V6, but the transmission and suspension had to be heavily modified to turn those heavy tracks. The rear tracks are 4 feet long and weigh significantly more than tires, yet the car still manages to push respectable speeds, proving that raw horsepower can solve almost any traction problem. The visual is absurd but amazing. You have the sleek aerodynamic lines of a Z-car sitting on top of rugged industrial tank treads. Driving it is reportedly a wild experience. It's loud, it vibrates, and since it's a convertible, if you don't put the top up, you are getting a face full of snow roost from your own tracks. The 370 Ski isn't for sale, it was a marketing stunt, but it represents the pinnacle of because we can engineering. It is the ultimate weird snowmobile because it started life as a summer track toy and ended up as a winter warrior. So there you have it, 10 of the strangest snow machines ever built. From the propeller-driven madness of the Tatra to the Nissan 370 Hus-Ski that turned a sports car into a tank, these vehicles proved that winter innovation knows no bounds. Now I want to hear from you. Which one would you actually dare to drive? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this ride through history, hit that like button and subscribe for more amazing engineering stories.